we're starting. So hello officially to everyone to this last informal data sharing of some national data that really has grown organically since we started last year. So I'm really happy to see many of you here. This time I am recording the session, unlike last time that I had a technical issue. So as you join, please continue to introduce yourself in the chat so we know who we have. So to end this year, we're going to be discussing today in this hour about vaccination coverage surveys, some challenges and really opportunities. What can we do better? So where we need to be, because the world has changed and the immunization program has suffered quite a bit with the current situation. And then where are we? So with surveys, what's happening? What's happened with recent surveys? And so how can we learn from what has happened this year with recent surveys and also from the not so great experiences of especially less than optimally planned ones that have also happened. So, and then ideally at the end of this session, and that's why I invite you to be active in your participation, I really would like to invite you to be active and help us set the priorities for the next year and next couple of years. So welcome to everyone, and we'll start. So I hope you can see my next slide. So this is a quick recap. In 2015, a group of people, are late Tony Burton, Dale Roda, late Pierre Claquin, and Felicity Katz, had been working on developing an updated vaccination coverage survey, cluster survey, the reference manual. So this is the new manual, the new guidance, etc. But it's not longer new. It has been 6 years already. And that was produced in 2015. And since it was refined, there were some consultation, trainings, etc. And it was finally published in its current form in 2018. There have been minor revisions, and at the bottom you have the website where you can find this. If you had it bookmarked, change it because it changed. In addition to having this new guidance, we have practical guides for routine immunization, post-campaign coverage surveys, yellow fever. We do have, very importantly, a white paper that David Brown really led for harmonization of immunization survey indicators. So this really, it's ideal when a country is doing some other type of survey that includes immunization. And this is very important because WHO is, for example, soon to implement the World Health Survey Plus. And really this harmonization guide is going to be crucial so that the immunization aspect of another survey is really usable for the immunization community. We have the vaccine coverage quality indicators tool, VKI tool, and documentations and other tools that have been developed independently, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. We did a few trainings a couple of years back, and there has been a more recent one led by our colleague David Coffey, who's in the call, with a focus on Francophone countries. And there is more to be done, a lot more that will be happening on linkages with health facilities, surveys, targeted surveys, more on analysis, really timeliness, geospatial. There's work ongoing for better indicators and more harmonized for maternal and neonatal tetanus, HPV. And finally, we had set up a research agenda for surveys, but we haven't advanced too much. So obviously there was COVID, but the plan is to do so in the next couple of years. So next I have, for vaccination coverage surveys, we're going to be really referring mostly to routine immunization and for children and infants mainly, and post-campaign coverage surveys, which is important because it's a requirement for a lot of the countries here joining us in the call. Now we also have tetanus, and I do not want to forget tetanus. Tetanus is really important, but sometimes a bit neglected. And also, just to let you know that for tetanus, there is more work to be done, but already MICS and DHS are a bit different, for example, in how they calculate some of the indicators that are crucial for tetanus, like protection at birth. You will have the slides, so this is just kind of FYI. So routine immunizations and post-campaign coverage surveys, there are some important differences. The routine immunization tend to be for a narrower age group, but it's important that it can be for more than one cohort, and depends really on what you're wanting to assess. Usually because it's a smaller age cohort, it requires more households. Vaccination cards, as you will see, have a lot more information. And the data collection is usually long. And if you're thinking a DHS or a mixed survey, those questions in routine immunization are usually the last ones, which you can imagine in a very long survey where you get to see some of the cards. It makes you wonder. Post-campaign coverage surveys tend to be smaller. The age group, it's usually bigger. It needs to be done quicker because usually recall is at play and there is sometimes no card or smaller cards, or just having to remember finger marking, etc. So just quick information there. And not every country does surveys all the time. So this is the year since the last survey. This slide is from UNICEF in July. So you can see that in a lot of countries, the most recent survey, it's more than 4 or 5 years ago. So what happened? We know that the world changed as we knew it last year. And as we can see, for DTP3 coverage in 2020, the global coverage went down at least 3 points, which left a lot more people unvaccinated, under and unvaccinated. So we increased the number of zero-dose children, meaning those who had not even received a first dose of diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis containing vaccine, and also the dropouts. So this is really bad, right? And we are probably going to be in a better position to understand what really happened with the decline and with catch up when we do more surveys. So, and that was 2020. Things in 2021 are not that much better either. In this slide, just to orient you, it's a partially reported data, it's preliminary data, but basically in the yellow line, you have what was 2020 by months compared to a baseline of 2019. So this is just number of the relative difference in number of doses reported between 2020 and 2019, and in blue, 2021 and 2019. So you can see that in a lot of the regions, of course, it's not representing all the cohort. In parentheses, you have the cohort and not every country, but we do see a big decline in 2020, obviously in the middle of the year, and then recovery. But in 2021, we also see some declines, and with COVID vaccine rollout, it's going to be probably worse. So again, just to say that we need to do surveys to understand the situation, and for Gavi eligible countries, it's even a requirement for routine and for post-campaign coverage survey. So for any campaign supported by Gavi. So in this talk, we're going to focus on five areas. And the first one, and probably it sounds obvious, but really, we still see some strange things when defining the survey scope and the objectives, because that sets the stage for planning. And sometimes we still see a mismatch between what people want. I also want a Ferrari or 3, or I don't know, it would be nice, and with the driver, but that's not realistic. And sometimes that's what we see, people really wanting massive, expensive surveys that are not that realistic when you compare with realities in the field, and the possibility of having quality control mechanisms in place, the timelines and the budgets that are then accompanying what's proposed. We are going to talk about minimizing sampling bias, and here key, of course, it's random sampling using probability sampling, where you do have to use a sampling frame, normally census enumeration areas, and then ideally update that sampling frame by visiting all the households in selected clusters, and then making a selection, and ideally not by the same people who are going to be doing the interview. So that's the methodological part, but really how you train and have people actually do that, we'll discuss that a little bit. And then, of course, we have the issue of special populations that are not in the usual sampling frames we have. The third area for today's conversation is the issues with vaccination ascertainment. The more complicated that schedules get, the more difficult it is to understand what a person actually received. And then we have appropriate data management and analysis, documentation. And finally, actually, let's use the survey data for decision making. So we'll start with the first focus area, where we are now is that sometimes we have ideas of surveys that are of a scope that are very unrealistic, really, vis-a-vis, as I said, the budget that it makes sense. A survey should not be more expensive than vaccinating people, the chronogram, the quality control, etc. And here, the main driver of some of this, it's the number of strata that are desired. So one strata is basically doing a bit of a separate survey in each strata, because for that strata, you are going to have a point estimate and uncertainty around that percentage coverage. Another big issue is that we still often receive requests for support late or with very short leeway. And that's a problem because sometimes it's too late to provide meaningful changes. I'm not going to name a country, but a country is planning a massive survey and they, for example, missed the opportunity to include tetanus, which is a bit disappointing for people like me working in immunization. Sometimes there is engagement of persons who are not familiar with the current WHO recommendations, which is, so people were still, some of them are used to the old 30/7. I'm dating myself, so when you had a quota of children that you needed to visit, and that's absolutely not what's in line with the modern ways of doing things and the possibility of doing things. Now, National Bureau of Statistics do have the means, most of them, to do a probability sampling. And then the timing is not always great on when a survey is planned vis-a-vis a DHS or mix. Here also, sometimes the age groups that are being planned don't allow or are not considered to monitor catch up. And here it's really important because we should be thinking about the cohort of children from 2020 and 2021 as our targets, because then we will know if those children who might not have been vaccinated in 2020 or 2021 actually were vaccinated late. So using survey data when you have cards and dates allows you to see the slope of recovery of these children, if you would, and then you have different examples of sometimes it's much faster, sometimes it's lower, but really we should be using the second year of life and a lot of the opportunities to really catch up, and this is even more relevant now. So sampling and reducing selection bias, we have talked about it, listings, maps, how to be inside the boundaries and how to do things properly. Ascertainment, cards, and really it's tricky. This is an analysis that was commissioned by Gavi and done by the Pelotas University, where in blue you have the percentage of cards seen in most recent surveys, DHS and mix, and then in the different shades of pink, it's people in the darker pink, it's the proportion of the children of the different age groups that never had a card, where the mother says, I never got a card. In the other ones, it's no longer has a card, so at the time of survey, the card is lost, misplaced, etc. And in the lighter pink, it's the card, it exists in theory, but it is not seen. And this is really important if you kind of look at the names of countries with the weakest immunization admin systems are also tend to be the ones with less cards available. And therefore, the quality, it's even more compromised there. The WHO guidance talks about visiting health facilities, but this is really rarely done. It's expensive and it has been attempted, but there's more work to do in this area. Even when you have a card, there are really strange things in the cards where it's unclear if it was a Penta 1, Penta 2. These are homemade cards, as you can see, because cards run out all the time. And we'll hear a little bit more about this. And then all these doses are kind of recorded together. So For analysis, we do have a tool developed by Dale Rolla here in the call with the idea that all calculation of and how we create our indicators should be transparent and the results replicable and well documented. So we do have the Wiki tools that allow us to do several of these data analysis parts. And then we do have a list of, oops, I have the old revision, but sorry, this has been most recently revised. And then any survey can really be analyzed with the Wiki. It would be ideal if the survey is already coded with the Wiki compatible ID numbers for the variables, and that's there. This is in Stata, but all the material allows you to reprogram this in a different tool. This has been done for some surveys in SPSS, in R, etc. So why this is important? Here, it's a paper that David Brown and us published last year, where on the left, to orient you to the comparison of DTP3 versus in a DHS or mix, compared to an EPI survey or vaccination coverage survey in the dots without the confidence intervals, done 1 year before or after, so within 1 year of each other. And in general, EPI surveys tended to have higher DTP3. On the left, on the right, you will see that these differences are huge, but mostly where the percentage of CARs seen is very different. So what is it? Is it a sampling thing? Is something about the cards that EPI surveys can see more cards because are tailored to immunization? Is it because we prefer people who have cards, or is it because really the DHS and mix go to lesser extremes to try to get the card to be shown at the survey? So this paper is published this year. Of course, I like it, so I recommend you to read it. But it raises the point of comparability, right? Like, and trying to go behind the scenes and understand why we see these differences. And this has important policy implications. So I'll pass the mic now to Chatura. Chatura, if you don't mind, I'll continue handling your slides. So if you can unmute yourself, and I'll introduce Chatura. It's from Sri Lanka. He has done a survey in Timor-Leste and recently was supporting Myanmar and then Nepal and now Qatar. Chatura?
And right before Carolina, this is Ben again. I've sent like some messages in. Please, everyone, look at the chat. If you haven't introduced yourself, I said I'm going to send like I sent my last message. But if you haven't introduced yourself, please do that. But also, like Dale has like put in some like wonderful links. So please like watch the presentation, but also like monitor the chat. Over.
Thank you so much. So Chatura, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Please
okay,
go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for the kind introduction. And just a small correction, still I haven't embarked on the survey with Qatar. So it is still pending. Okay, coming back to my topic, I will just quickly go through. These are some thoughts I got when I did the surveys. So the first slide, I want to kind of have some idea on field level random selection of survey participants. Only statistician I know from this talk is Dale. This is basically for you, Dale, to think about. This happened when basically the main issue came with the Nepal experience with the COVID-19 zero survey work. And again, I can link to MRSIA post-campaign survey, which I involved in the Timor-Leste as well. To give some background on the COVID-19 zero survey in Nepal, our cohort consists of anyone above 6 months of 6 months or above, and we need to select one participant from each household selected. So for this one, we used ILO modified KISH grid. for this random selection. But in the data analysis, what we saw was in the extreme of age, we saw underrepresentation of the participants. So we thought of the possible explanation. What we thought of kind of three possibilities. One is the voluntary bias by middle-age age group, not kind of exposing the older or the young people for the blood drawing, because it involved blood drawing also. Then the second one was the systematic exclusion of participants of extreme age group in favor of blood draw feasibility by the surveyors. The third one was the this simplified version is not fit enough to represent the population age distribution. Basically, in the survey, we can kind of avoid the first two occasions with proper training as well as much rigorous field supervision. However, if the third one is the cause, what I want to know, or kind of a suggestion, is how to adjust the crash grid according to a particular country context. That is my basic question. Next slide, please, Karina. Yeah, this is again more relevant to the zero surveys because my kind of again the experience was in Nepal. When we did the second zero survey, the request came kind of as a flash request. The government need to do this survey within 2 to 3 months time. And the calculated sample size and the agreed sample size was huge. So we had to kind of collected over 13,000 samples. So, and we had to kind of visit 1,370 clusters. So preparing map was a problem because we only had cluster boundaries. We call the wards. GIS map was there. And we managed to get some idea using OpenStreetMap building footprints and had a basic map for our consumption. Again, our new methodology more emphasize on this map usage. So now I think we need to kind of think about more rigorous way of preparing these maps and need to kind of a standardized process for this one. So again, a question for the Carolina and team. Yeah, and then the capital. This is one area which I think we are kind of wasting most of our time, because as far as I know, most of the surveys redo the work and in the development, testing, and debugging, which takes a lot of time of the survey preparation. So my kind of a suggestion to look into a solution where you can kind of have a modular approach with the key vaccine coverage indicator data module, where the things are very standard. And then we may have a program specific requirement. So how we can develop another module and how to combine this thing and pre-formulate as a standard tool. That is the next suggestion with the field experience. Carolina, is there any? Oh yeah. So the next thing is, again, when we kind of do a survey, then we write the report and present to the stakeholders. Sometimes we may have kind of a disagreement. To avoid this one, what I did was, even in Myanmar, and again the Timor-Leste, as well as zero surveys in the Nepal, from the start, we kind of had a very small team consists of the national program, the members coming from national program, as well as from the WHO country office. If any other stakeholder like to participate, we include them in a little way. And I took them through the whole, starting from the protocol development up to the report writing. Then they know what has happened, and the kind of difficulties in achieving some data. So all those things, they have been exposed. Again, it is a learning process as well, because we are now collecting the pictures of cards, so they know, and the vaccination registers, so they know where the documentation issues are, so they can again kind of correct all those things later in the replanning activity, as a replanning activity. Next slide. I think, yeah, that's all from my side, Carolina.
Thank you so much, Chatura. So if you have questions for Chatura, please type them in the chat. And there are some questions. And here, other recent experiences. So we are going to hear from some of the persons trained in our WHO survey program that have been supporting surveys, but I'm very happy to say that they have been supporting each other. And I'll first pass the floor to Draman Palenfo, and then to David Coffey, because David is the second point. He has a training program for Francophone participants where he has had people actually doing field work, which is incredible with COVID and all. And then I'll open the floor for our colleagues in Pakistan, for example, and others that may want to add in their experiences. So we are at 4:30 in Geneva. So the next 15-20 minutes for presentation and then for discussion. So Palenfo, unmute yourself.
Yes, hi Carolina, hi everybody. So yes, I will go quickly for 3 or 4 slides about some concern or some issue during the immunization coverage. But I would like to thank you, David Coffey, with whom we have done some of these vaccination coverage, especially in Cote d'Ivoire. So the first thing, as you have shown before, there is a kind of discrepancy, a gap between carved ons and carved shown. When you go through these 3 countries, Djibouti, Madagascar, and Cote d'Ivoire, where I have supported the last survey, there is a gap of more than 30 points on the Djibouti, and we have 17 points in Madagascar, but Cote d'Ivoire only 8 points. So during the survey, sometimes people tell that they own a car, but they are not able to show them to the surveyor. So when we consider for Cote d'Ivoire, the question is, are the information more reliable because of higher availability of cards? But it is not all the time so. Example, in Cote d'Ivoire, around 20-25% of vaccination dates were reviewed after the data collection by the coordination team because of inconsistency we have seen during the data cleaning process, missing dates, missing information on the, even if vaccination cards were available, sometimes information was unreadable by the surveyor because of the facility capacity to well write the dates. And also sometimes issue with the format of dates. Sometimes when the country share the border with an Anglophone country, we have some type issue on the format of date because you will face vaccination card coming from this country and the format are not the same. So even if this if the availability of car are high, we are not all the time sure that the information will be more reliable. And the second thing I want to show, yes, when you go into the process of data cleaning, at the end, using Wiki for the analysis, you will face something that will tell you how consistency is the date you have found on this vaccination card. For example, here, all the things that are red in the first column and that are not zero tell you that you have a vaccination card, but the dates inside are not so consistency to be used for the vaccination coverage with dates. So for example, we have 15 information with non-sensical dates. We have some that are prior to the possible date of vaccination, and so on. So don't all the time rely just on the availability of the card, because inside how these cards were filled are also important. This is the picture for Djibouti, and we have also next slide the pictures for Madagascar. Next slide, where we see also here that we have less discrepancy like in Djibouti, but the pictures show that 15% of doses in the card were not so completely to be considered as a fully date, and so they will not be included in the vaccination with card, but they will be switched under the vaccination with according to the history. And yeah, these were just these three things I would like to share with you, and I would like to thank Dale Roda for his support, and Carolina during the use of Wiki to perform this analysis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Palenfo. Now we'll pass it to somebody who's I admire, and many of us do, because we have worked with him since the beginning of the launching of these surveys, and he has been working in Africa mostly, in tetanus, in EPI, and with surveys. And he has had a program for training supported by Gavi for Francophone people. So David, if you can open the mic, the floor is yours. Thank you.
And while David is opening his mic, just one last request. If you are on this conference call and you've not entered your name and organization into the chat, please do that. Over.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, unfortunately, I don't have a slide. A small problem with a small problem.
There is a little echo, but we can hear you. So while David can talk to us, I'll tell you a little bit about this initiative. So the cabinet ADS that David has in Côte d'Ivoire has been training, and he has trained people from a variety of countries, Benin, Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea, I'm missing others, Haiti even, and some of the interesting things is that there has been practice of doing this, and the most recent experience we have seen in Côte d'Ivoire. David, can you try your mic again? So while we wait for David to connect, these are his pictures, and here it's one of the issues that David and I have discussed a lot actually. It's this issue of the cards. If you're an interviewer,
Do you hear me now?
yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Unfortunately, I cannot show my presentation, so I will just speak. And I want to focus on. I don't want to come back on what the previous presentators have said, because it's the same thing. And I want to focus on two things. The first thing is the training. Sometimes we can have a very good protocol, very good protocol, but the problem is when we have to go to the field, we need to train. We need to train our actors. And here, I think for me, we don't have any, let's say, we don't know how really to train the investigators and how to train the supervisors. And the key of the quality of a survey is in the hand of the surveyors, the investigators, and the supervisors. But unfortunately, we don't know really how to train them. We think that we have just to give them some instruction how to fill the forms, and then you can go to the field. And this is a very big error. So what we are trying to do now is to formalize the training of the investigators according to what they will find in the field. And we have developed a lot of various and appropriate exercises, really a lot of exercises during the training. And what we train is how to develop these exercises. When you are doing a training for a survey, how to develop a lot of exercises and how to apply these exercises during the training. So sometimes we don't prepare the different type of exercises and then we go for a training. We have to develop two kinds of exercises. The first one is how to decide to include an eligible. This seems to be very easy, but when you see the percentage of children who have a card is very few sometimes, so you don't know, because the inclusion is according to the birth date. But when you don't have the birth date, how can you include a children in the survey? This can lead to bias. So we need during the training to train them very well, to organize themselves, to include very well the eligible. And also we have to train them to take the information. Even if we have the card, Carolina showed you, you can have a card, but that doesn't mean anything, because the card can be so bad, then you cannot use them during the survey. We have some picture here where sometimes they have only one date for, let's say, 2 or 3 vaccines, and sometimes you have nothing. So you see, this is very difficult. So you have to train the surveyors when they will be in the field, what they have to do. And what we try to do is not just to take photo. It's so complicated. We say, okay, you don't have to try to fill the form directly from the field. They have just to take photo, and they send the photo to a central level, and this central level can use this photo to fill the forms. And the other part of the training is about the supervisors. The supervisors are those who can guarantee the quality of the survey. And sometimes we don't have specific training for these supervisors. And this will lead to very bad quality of surveys, you see. So for me, you have to train the surveyors, but you have to train the supervisors on how to supervise the quality of the training. And we have also here to develop appropriate exercises for them. And we have to train everybody to how to develop this kind of exercises, exercises for surveyors and exercises for supervisors. And I think that we need to have a database, a very great database of different kind of exercises. And then when somebody wants to do a training for service, then he can go there to adapt, to take these exercises and adapt them for his own situation. And then I want to talk, let's say, last about the decision making. Sometimes we are waiting too much. There is too much expectation from surveys. And it's not easy for the surveys to say, okay, we want to give some, let's say, recommendation. But this recommendation, we cannot take this recommendation to take decision, because the survey can give up how much, where we are, what is the situation, but the survey cannot give us why we are there. And sometimes it's a mistake. We finish the survey and we say, okay, we're going to do some, to give some recommendations, and with this recommendation, we can change the situation. It's not possible. So we need the information from the surveys, and also we need to know the program. We need to ask some questions to the managers and to put together what we got from the survey and also what they have from the field during the implementation. So if you don't do these two things, we'll say, okay, we have finished the survey, but we cannot do anything with the result of the survey. That's true, because the survey can give you only why, how much, but the survey cannot tell you why we are there. Where we are, the survey can tell you, but why you are there, the survey cannot tell you. We need programmatic information before putting the where we are and why we are there, to put all two things together and then to make decision, good decision. So as Carolina said, we are training more than 200 professionals for the new Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we are training. This training is to train people who can conduct survey. And so we have in this training, we have two parts. The first part is to give them what are these, let's see, je ne sais pas comment dire en français.
Tu peux le dire, je peux traduire.
Oui, qu'est-ce les directives? Les directives. Quelles sont les directives? Ça, c'est la première des choses. So the first thing is to give them
the guidance, the norms.
Yeah, the guidance. What is in the guidance? And what we want is people, they have to return. Every time they are doing a survey, they have to go back to these guidelines and then to read the guidelines and to see, according to these guidelines, what we have to do in this part of the survey. Every time they have to go back to the guidelines. Sometimes we think that we know all the guidelines and we don't go back to these guidelines. So during the training, we ask them to go every time back to the guidelines, to know them very, very well, and how to adapt these guidelines to their own situation. And the third part is to try to implement these guidelines in the field with small surveys, what we call the small survey, 1 or 2 clusters. And to finish, what I want to add somebody said something about the clusters. We developed also how to take the polygon of the survey, during the surveys in the field. One of the very difficult things is to recognize the limit of the clusters. And so what we did in Cote d'Ivoire, we put the limit of the clusters in the form of the surveyors. And then using this, when they are in the field, they can know very well if they are inside the cluster or if they are outside the clusters. It's very easy for them to do it. You have just to put the limit of the clusters in the phone, and then they use the phone to go around in the cluster to see if they are in the cluster or if they are outside the cluster. So we developed a lot of material during the training, but now we cannot show all these things. Perhaps in another meeting, we can show it. We developed also how to develop quickly a protocol and how to develop quickly also a budget. But sometimes when we don't know how to develop a realistic budget and how to modify quickly this budget, we can be in trouble. So what we have developed during this training, we have a platform, and in this platform, the platform will ask you some of parameters, and when you enter these parameters, it gives you a broad budget. And so we can show the budget, say, okay, this is the budget. And then if the decision maker want to change something, when we change it, it will change the budget. And so this is a very, very useful and very quick way to do budget and show it to those who have to have the decision. So it's what I want to add now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. And I think this doesn't do justice to the ADS website that David and his team has created, where people do exercises, etc. So the idea is how we bring it all together to have a repository of tools. We do have something TechNet. It hasn't been very active, but the plan is to revive it and re-energize it next year. I'll give the floor to Mohammed Qureshi, who is one of the survey scholars as well, and to ask him about his participation in Pakistan surveys. And in the meantime, while he unmutes himself, I just wanted to highlight that in the most recent IRC, I don't remember what it stands for, the big committee that reviews proposals presented to Gavi, noted that in September meeting that there are big differences in the frequency and the quality of immunization coverage surveys. And we really want to improve this, at least the quality part. And then that's why one of the reasons we're doing this, like how do we support countries to do this in a better manner. Mohammed Imran Qureshi, if you are there, if you can unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Carolina, for providing this wonderful opportunity. Hope I'm audible.
So
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to share one aspect that we recently concluded the largest ever global mass vaccination campaign, MR campaign in Pakistan, where more than 92 million children were vaccinated in just 12 days during the campaign. And now the post-campaign coverage survey is underway, and the data collection process is going on. Hope to see the reports and the raw data soon, so that we can generate some quality secondary analysis on the post-campaign coverage data. This is over from my side.
Thank you so much. So because we are short on time, I'll just finish by introducing a new module now for all the more qualitative questions. The why are people, the behavioral and social drivers of vaccination, and instead of our more ad hoc questions about reasons for no vaccination, has been a working group that has developed this framework, which is called the BEST for behavioral and social drivers. And the framework includes social processes, thinkings and feelings, motivation, so that thinking and feeling and social processes contribute to motivation. And then there is the issues of practical. How can we get there? It help us put ourselves in the shoes of different caregivers taking their children. Importantly, the tools and the questionnaires recommended by this group have to undergo through a process of cognitive testing to make sure that they are appropriate and understood. I remember a story from David Coffey, in fact, where if you ask women why the mother couldn't go, they would say she was busy. And the males in the training were saying she was not careful enough or not dedicated enough. And it was the same response given by the mother. Is just how it was interpreted, that even suffer from bias depending on the gender of the interviewing. So this new module was this approach was endorsed by SAGE, and it should be coming soon, all the questions and the options, how to calculate the indicators, and most importantly, all the standard operating procedures to do the cognitive testing, analysis, and etc. So to finish, we're working on some target surveys. Dale did a review here of what's the targeted survey and how we can go about it. Two complementary concepts. Basically, a subset of people could be, for example, people who live in slums, nomadics, etc., or just trying to focus on a target effort from a more agile approach than necessarily a very statistically sound survey, yet with controls of quality. So we understand, again, where our biases can be, and that help us interpret the information a little better. Anna Maurice, she might be in the call, she's leading this. These were the main use cases, really this issue of equity in immunization coverage. How are we maintaining, restoring immunization service delivery now, courtesy of COVID? And then the zero dose identification and monitoring. And just to finish, I'll open the floor for questions, but just some thoughts here. Remember that countries with the most difficult administrative systems, they also tend to have low card retention, poor quality of cards, poor records in hand facility, inaccessible areas, all sampling frames. So it's not that the survey is going to solve all our problems. EPI managers tend to want the Ferrari, and I don't blame them, a district level survey, but that's usually not advisable because it's too much for usually what we can do. But we could try to target surveys. We can try to do rolling surveys, and ultimately we need to go beyond just having a number and really having this investment to be about useful information for the program, to bring it together with other information and make improvements. So I'll stop here, and anybody unmute yourself. If Ben can look at the mics, and anybody.
Yeah, there's been a lot of questions and points. Hopefully when you share these slides, Carolina and Dale, please feel free to jump in. But there have been a lot of links that have been put in about a number of the questions in real time. There was just reflecting on one of the comments, adult learning procedures or techniques are really needed. We want to make sure that if we're trying to reach out to our immunization colleagues on the ground, that we take it at that level. So I think there's a lot of material out there. How do we filter through what's going to actually be appropriate and work will be one of the big challenges. But again, Dale, is there anything you want to add? Because again, I know we're right at time. When you're looking through the comments, are there any ones you want to address?
Thanks, Ben. No, I don't have anything more to add. Thank you, Angela, for adding those links on the triangulation. I'm eager to look at those myself. And I'm excited about what David Kofi is doing in West Africa. He's always pushing us to be practical, and then to not only make nice tables and figures, but to help the relevant stakeholders use them. So thank you for that focus, David. This was super, super helpful. Thanks, everybody. And let's follow up more, Chatura. The Kish thing is easily done, and we just have to figure out, platforms and things like that. But that is a gap. So I think we've identified several gaps here in the materials that we have. If anyone can't follow the links, we'll send the links to all the papers Carolina mentioned. And if you click it and you would have to pay to get that paper, then you can send email to me or to Carolina, and we'll send you a copy in a black envelope through the mail.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, for participating. If you have suggestions, comments, please do send them to us. We are here to try to make this better and to make them more useful. So thank you to the wonderful people who have been in the Scholar trainings and all of you for joining us today. So if you have questions, just send them or suggestions. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays, Carla. Happy holidays, everyone. And those who celebrate
Thank you.
Christmas, Merry Christmas and goodbye and happy better 2022.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Carolina.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Happy New Year. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Carolina. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Carolina,
Happy
can
New
you email me
Year. Bye.
the
Bye.
chat also when you receive it in email later?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I should
I'll
be
put
able-
together a Word doc. Hey, Pull-Info. I'll put together a Word doc and that you can send out along with
That would be super.
the slides that has those links.
Thank you.
Andrea, you're still here.
Okay,
Andrea,
see you next day. We will keep in touch.
that sounds good.
Thank you so much. I'll go.
Dr. Carcelin, are you there?
Oh, Andrea.
Maybe she stepped away.
Yeah.
Great.
Bye.